Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to the Dice Tower. Today we're taking a look at a game called Squid Incorporated from WizKid Games. And Squid Incorporated is a game about the corporate world where you're trying to get a better job and move to the top. And in this game, you're all fish because I don't know why, actually. I guess it makes it more palatable for you to say, hey, we're fish in the corporate world, than as opposed to, hey, it's Alice, Jenny, Bob, and Joe in the corporate world. But what have you. This is a game where you'll be drafting cards and using clout to get your way to the top. I'll show you more. This game is going to end when every spot on this game is filled, and there's going to be security cards that are put in here. But the game board here, you're going to have lots of different people, and you want them to have your symbol on them. And at the end of the game, when the board is filled, we'll take the value of each of these people and multiply it, if down here, by 1, if they're in here by 3, if they're here by 5, if they're here in the very top spot by 7. So you can see, obviously, if I would have someone up here, that's 28 points. It's going to be hard to replicate that down here in the ×1. This spot is almost a game winner, unless someone gets a couple people, you know, up here in the 5 category, like, ooh, that's 12 times 5, 60. That's better than 28. Now, each person has a mailroom, and at the beginning of the game, you're going to get a couple of employees randomly in your mailroom. You can only ever have 3 people in your mailroom at the same time. You will find the tiles that match these people. Now, this is kind of a weird thing about this game, and I don't really understand why you're supposed to take all these tiles and set them out all next to the board, and then whenever you get a new employee, you take their tile. But I don't understand why the board would just have to be a little bit bigger, why you just don't use the cards on the board. Now, the argument against that would be there's a couple security guard cards that when they pop up, you add a security guard tile to the board. But I could see just putting a couple of those in the deck anyway. And the other is that, how do you know what your special abilities are if they're on the board? It's easier when they're in front of you. But when they're on the board, everybody can see them. I had a lot of problems in this game that I was like, I don't remember what Professor Paradis does. And then I would have to ask, Joe, what does Professor Paradis does? And he would have to tell me. So and it also just feels like extra components for no reason at all. Again, these cards actually almost fit in these spaces. I mean, they do fit, but it's going to be tight. So why not just use the cards? I just found it to be an odd thing. All right. So the way the game works is you are accumulating clout in this game. Clout is how the world runs round. And so on a player's turn, they're going to pick somebody from this unemployed line here. So I could pick the self-starter, the placement agent, or the middle manager. When I take them, one of 2 things is going to happen. I can add them to my mailroom if there's an open slot. Or I take clout. The clout's going to be equal to their clout number on them, plus or minus, or this is 0, that. So I could say, I'm going to get rid of this self-starter and take 4 clout. Now, when I have this clout, I can either put it on someone out on the field already, I could put it on someone in my mailroom, or I could put it on a little bit of both. Why am I doing that? Because when someone has clout on them, let's say I put it all here on Professor Paradis. I put it there. Professor Paradis has a 3. I put 4 clout on him. I will now discard 3 of that clout, and Professor Paradis now goes on the board in any open spot down here. If there are no open spots, let's say the whole board was filled, I could bump somebody who's smaller than me off the board. Boom. And that is what you do. Now, I would leave the extra clout on him because there was 4. And if I fill him up with clout in the future, I can spend that clout to use his special ability, which in his case is perform the ability of any employee in the mailroom. So I could do that different thing. So what are these abilities? Well, sometimes this here says float an adjacent employee, which means you can push someone aside, which could be off the board and they're out. Promote is on a few cards, and promote is how you get up to the next sections. And if someone else is in that section, you can kick them out, again, if they're smaller than you, pushing them down to the next tier. You can dismiss people, kicking them out, pushing them down a lower tier. When you're done, you push these cards up, put a new card in here, and you go on to the next person. And this just continues, like I said, till the board gets filled. Now, there are different events. There are security guards, like I said, and security guards come when one of their cards shows up. And also, whenever someone's dismissed from the workplace, a security guard shows up, and they start filling the highest spots, and they'll come down. Now, the highest spots means they're going to fill in these big numbers, but they can be pushed out because they have no clout at all. That's kind of the game. Before we end here, let me just show you some of the abilities on the cards. Return an adjacent employee to their owner's mailroom. Take control of an adjacent employee. The bigger the clout, the better the ability is. Dismiss Cardi, to bring an employee from the unemployed line into the workplace. Promote any other employee from this tier. Demote an employee from one tier above Lomberg. There's a security guard. Float an adjacent employee. Demote an employee. Switch the positions of two employees in the workplace. Dismiss an adjacent employee and replace him with an employee from the unemployed line. Take control of the new employee. Blah, 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 blah. You can see these are all pretty much the same. The self-starter can just promote himself to the next tier. So that's kind of what you have. That's pretty much the game. Let's go to final thoughts. Okay, so I already showed you a bit about how I think the cards would have been better than tiles. This game has a bit of a fiddly feel to it. Other than that, though, I really struggle to like anything about this game. I'm giving this game a 5 out of 10, and I think some of the positive points are I like the artwork on the fish. I actually like the fish theme. I think the components are nice, even though there's duplicate card tiles. And it's fairly straightforward in what you do. Those are all positive points. But once we get past that, I dislike a lot of the rest of it. I do not like the fact that there's only a few of these fish who can promote anybody. So there's this whole like, ooh, promoting people. Well, almost no one promotes anyone. And so that's problematic. There's a lot of the game is just kind of boring. You put people down there, and so much of the game is just take that. I took control of your fish. I pushed your fish off the board. And it just gets kind of meh. And in this game, every time I played it, somebody gets clobbered. I mean, really clobbered, because it's so easy to push someone off the board. You know, at the end of the game, it'll be like 80 to 30 to 4, because there's just so much of that going on. And the game just feels overly lucky. When you look at those 3 fish that you in the employment line that you have there, if there's a 6, you take it. Why would you not? If you have space to put it in your mailroom, you're going to put it in your mailroom because it has a good special ability. Or you want this 6 clout. And it's so lucky. You can play the game and it always seems like small ones are out when it's your turn, as you get a little bit of clout. I just don't understand that mechanism. You know, if it was discard a fish to get some clout and the clout was always the same, I think that would be better. Or something, because it just feels like this huge amount of luck. The whole game is a bundle of chaos. And I can't... I don't want to deal with that. You're filling up the board. You're always asking people, what does that fish do? Well, that fish floats someone next to them. Well, I'm not going to put any of my fish next to that because you'll just fill it up and knock me off. Unless I put a fish next to it and hope I get more clout than you. But it never feels like any of the moves are very tactical because it's all based on that random drawing of those cards in that line. And then the points at the end, if you get someone into that top position, let's say you get a 5 into that top position. 5 times 7 is 35 points. That means that we need to put 35 points worth on level 1 to tie you. And that's not your only fish. You're going to be putting fish on level 1 too. And in every game, whoever had their fish in the first or second, the 7 times and the 5 times, won. Every single time. Because you just can't beat that amount of points. And you say, well, if someone gets in that spot, you want to move up there and take them out. Or use another fish to demote them. Again, this whole take that. This game feels so fiddly, it feels so random, and there's so much take that in. It just checks box after box after box of things I don't like. So I don't know who to recommend us to. Because people who like those games, you're like, ha ha ha, look what I did to you. And there are people like that sort of thing. But they want it to be simpler. This game feels clunky. And it's just so random. Maybe if you like fish and you like business, and you've always wanted to see the two combined. Again, I don't mind the fishy theme here. And again, I think the game looks nice. But there's too many problems for me to say much more good about it. So that is Squid Incorporated. Unfortunately, not one I think you should get. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.